We got some post-track day maintenance to do, and let's sit down and talk a minute about this new CSF Dual Oil Cooler system. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for watching today. It's been a couple of weeks since Grid Life. Quite an exciting time, to say the least. And to tell you the truth, it's kind of nice to wind down a little bit and not think so intensely about cars for a minute. But the car's been sitting, and I just haven't had time to get to it, quite frankly. But I managed to get the stickers off, or most of the stickers, just not the windshield stickers and the stickers in the back. Just, you know, unfortunately, being in California, I don't want to draw too much attention to myself, because that wouldn't be a good thing. So anyways, as you'll notice, I have the bumper off. We're going to be changing the radium coolant tank out for a PRL one. It's larger capacity. It's going to give you more cooling capacity. We're going to do an oil change, transmission flush. I'm not going to bore you guys with all that stuff, but that's basically what we're doing today. But what I wanted to show you and talk about a little bit is the CSF prototype dual oil cooler system. So it's comprised of 3 coolers, and really the magic behind this design is not the oil coolers. I know that sounds weird, but that's not where the magic is. The magic is in the transmission cooler, and the transmission cooler is right here. Okay, it's the same heat exchanger as the oil coolers, which one is right there, one is right there. These are the prototype brackets. They're going to bolt into partially factory areas, and you will have to drill some new holes into the side of the crash beam. But these are very, very strong brackets. You know, this isn't like the final look of the kit, but that's approximately what it's going to look like. And then the transmission cooler is right here. Now, what's the deal with this? Okay, because a few of you have reached out to me and you asked, well, does it really need a transmission cooler? And the answer is no. Yes and no, actually. So the reason why we have a transmission cooler is because, and I can't for the life of me think why nobody else on the market has really done this yet. Not to my knowledge, not at this capacity, okay? But the coolant and the oil run through the transmission in an OEM setup to help cool the transmission down. Well, when you're tracking these cars, you know, the transmission gets really hot. It gets really hot. And all that does is drive more heat into the coolant and the oil through the factory system, the way the factory system is set up, which is just dumb. It's just not a good idea, because the factory cooling system already struggles, and all you're doing is making its job harder by trying to cool the transmission as well. So what we did is we divorced the OEM coolant and oil going through the transmission to cool that down. We took that out, we capped that off. So now the coolant and the oil no longer have to cool the transmission, and then we gave the transmission its own cooling system, okay, which is a lot better. So now the transmission fluid itself is getting cooled, and not just like, you know, bypass, and not just passively through the coolant and the oil that was originally cooling the system. And then you're taking a lot of the heat out of the coolant and the oil, which makes the dual oil coolers even more effective. What has this done? Well, here's my observations so far, okay? It was probably about 85-ish, 85 plus ambient temperature at Laguna Seca in Grid Life for my first session, okay? It was pretty hot. And I was, you know, just ringing it, putting the car through the ringer, and purposely stressing it to see where the limits were. Well, the first session, I did 4 hot laps. I was able to get 4 hot laps before the car said, okay, it's too hot, you need to cool down, let the engine cool down, stop driving so hard. So that's when the warning light kicked on, was after 4 hot laps, okay? Everybody else on the track did 2 hot laps at most, and they were cooling down. It should also be noted that I accidentally had my air conditioning on at full blast. I did not realize that until after I got off of the track. So the knucklehead move, but I had the air conditioning on at full blast, which is not what you want in a car that has issues with overheating. Okay, that's like opposite of what you want to do. If anything, you want to turn the heater on. But I didn't have the heater on. I had the AC on full blast, as cold as it will go, and highest fan speed. So, and on top of all that, we had a bubble in the coolant. Okay, so not perfect. We didn't sort all those things out before we got on track, because if you watch that video, there just wasn't any time. I mean, the car barely made the event. Barely made the event. We were throwing it all together just to try and get the car there, let alone being able to test it and really see if there was any issues to address before putting it on track. So anyways, long story short, before the second session, we corrected the bubble. I made sure the AC was off. I didn't turn the heater on, but despite that, the oil and water temps were good for the rest of the day. Okay, it's still got a little warm on the oil later in the afternoon when it started getting warm again, but I still didn't have the heater on. I just had the AC off and the heater off, but no heater on. So my initial impressions on the cooling system is I think we nailed it. I think we're pretty much where we need to be. It's just we need a little more testing, but I think with the dual oil cooler system and the transmission cooler on a hot day, like 85, I'd say, yeah, 85 plus degree ambient, and on a high-speed track, a lot of straights, uphill, blah, 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 blah. If you have the dual oil cooler with the transmission cooler and you put the heater on, I think you're going to be good for your whole 20-minute session, because I was good the whole rest of the day. The remainder of the 20-minute sessions that I did for the whole event, I was good. So promising, but yes, we do still need to do some testing. This is just an initial impression. So, but everything that we're seeing so far is looking pretty amazing. I'm sure you're going to be seeing more information on this from CSF, and we'll probably have more of a finished kit by then. The front vents, it's still, well, the whole system is prototype, but the front vents aren't finalized either. Really where we want to get to is get to a point where we can make a mold that, you know, fits the curve of the bumper a little better than mine does. Mine, the curve of mine doesn't fit perfectly. You can't really see it on camera, but when you're up close and you're actually looking for it, you can see that the fitment isn't quite where I'd want it. And then maybe have them made in carbon fiber at some point, maybe. I mean, that'd be a great idea. It's something that we talked about as well. So anyways, just a quick video today. I'm just kind of walk you through what I do for post-track day maintenance. We're going to do oil change, transmission flush, radiator flush, and just, you know, check brakes, check to make sure no bolts are loose and stuff like that. These are really all the things that you should look at post-track day. So let's get to it. All right, Prl Coolant tank. Thank you, Prl, for sending this to me for, you know, for my upcoming track days. Unfortunately, didn't make it onto the car before my last one, but always love you guys. Thank you. And here is the biggest reason right here. Check this out. Look at the capacity of this bad boy. I mean, just looking at it from the side, I mean, just this, where between my two fingers, is probably not that much thinner than the whole of the radium tank. So this is much more fluid, way more fluid than that little guy. And what that's going to offer is, since there's more coolant in the system, it's going to take longer to heat up that additional coolant. So this is going to work great for my track days. You got the various fittings in here. Have to reuse some of the hoses. Looks like that's it. All right, let's get this fitted up and on. All right, there it is. Expansion tank is in. From a design perspective, I like this better, just because it uses the factory mounting points, where on the radium tank you got to take the factory brackets out and just mount directly to the chassis, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you're working in tiny areas here, Honda puts the brackets in place to make it easier to bolt in their OEM coolant tank. So PRL did the same thing. They reutilized the OEM mounting points, which makes it way easier to mount than the radium tank. And it's one solid piece, not a two-piece design like this. You have to bolt like basically two halves together, and you know, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but there are some people who have reported leakage from not torquing the screws down appropriately, so you don't, you know, there's like a gasket in between the two pieces there. So there's a little more room for error in a situation like this. And you see Radium has their own bracketry, you know, and I understand they're trying to be a little fancy, and I get all that, but from a design perspective, you know, I really like this PRL setup. It's bigger, it holds more liquid, it looks good, you know, looks great with the rest of the engine bay. And you can get this in red, and I believe one other color too. I'm not sure. Need to double check on that. But if you want this for your car, you can get it from Two Step Performance, where I get 98% of my stuff from. I'll leave you a link in the description below, but let's move on to the next thing. We're going to fill this up with distilled water. Now keep in mind, I live in California, okay? The weather is not overly cold here, even though I feel cold a lot of the times. I just got distilled water and water wetter. That's all that's going in my car. That's it. The water wetter will be just enough to where it won't cause any freezing, and it should be fine for California weather. That's all I need. And water is always going to be the best coolant for your car temperature-wise. You shouldn't put tap water or bottled water in your cooling system. You can in a pinch, but I wouldn't leave it in there. And that's actually the main reason why I'm doing this today is, well, besides a PRL expansion tank, but because at the track I had a bubble in my cooling system. If you watch that video earlier today, I mentioned that. And I didn't have any distilled water, so I just had to top it off with bottled water. So in a pinch, it's okay. I wouldn't leave it in there for too long, because that can cause corrosion over time, leave deposits inside of your radiator. All kinds of not good stuff can happen. So distilled water, I mean, if you can find it, it's a little bit tough to find, at least where I live, but deionized water would really be better than distilled. But if you don't have deionized water, distilled is great. And then I just do, you know, 1 or 2 bottles of this with water, and that's it. I used to do half and half, where I do half distilled and then half Honda coolant. Not anymore. It's not really necessary. I don't daily drive the car a whole lot. I do a little bit, but not a lot. So anyways, we're gonna fill up the reservoir now. Everything is mostly buttoned up. And then we'll finish up the rest of the fluids. All right. We're under the car. And I just want to show you guys a couple of things. So I just put the drain valve, the drain bolt. I just put the drain bolt back in for the radiator. And while I'm under here, I try to make a habit of checking everything else, right? Like making sure this hose clamp is good. You know, this charge pipe here is on. You know, just looking for anything that might be a problem. All right, I just finished draining the oil. Oil filter is on. Putting oil in the engine right now. I get this question a lot, and I see this question a lot in the forums. So I'm just going to share with you guys what it is I use for oil, okay? I know I'm not going to have a track day for a while, so for daily driving purposes, and I'll use this for track days too, because it's perfectly fine too, but I'll use AMSOIL Dominator 5W20, okay? And then I like using Motul 300V, which I don't have any of right now, and the other one that I also like, if I want to go a little bit thicker, which I'm probably going to stick to, probably moving here forward, is Redline 5W30 or Motul 300V 5W30. Just a little bit thicker because of the level of mods on this car. It's not a bad thing to do. I want to make sure the oil pressures stay up and just make sure everything is healthy. Completely unnecessary for a stock engine. Completely unnecessary even for a mildly tuned engine that you're tracking. Just my honest opinion, especially if you're in California. Because here's the thing. Everybody talks about using thicker oil. And look, to a degree, there's nothing wrong with using thicker oil. But what you have to understand is thicker oil holds more heat. Okay? And generally speaking, thicker oil is going to have a little more resistance through viscosity within the engine. So even though it's like barely measurable, maybe not even measurable at all, but the thicker your oil, in theory, the less wheel horsepower your car is going to produce. Okay, so flow characteristics, horsepower, where you live, weather, how you're using the car, there's a lot of variables, right? And so just a blanket question of what oil should I use is not really the question to ask, unless you've already divulged and given up the other information, how you're driving your car, do you track it, how often, what oil are you using, what brands do you like, how much you want to spend, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of variables. So that's just what I use, okay? AMSOIL Dominator, Redline, Motul 300V, anywhere from 0W20 to 5W30. That's as thick as I'll go. We did the oil, did the transmission fluid, did the coolant reservoir, toe straps, still waiting for the damn splitter brackets. Leveled out the hood a little bit and fixed the boost leak, or the intake leak rather. Now we can finally wash the car. First time in 3 weeks I'm able to wash this car. Highly unusual for me, but you know what? Having said that, it still looks pretty damn good. I mean, you can definitely tell. If you're here in person, you can tell how dirty it is, but you know, we'll get it washed and get the, you know, hot rubber marks from the track off the yellow wrap. And she'll look amazing. Let's get to it. This stuff right here is a godsend. This racing rubber remover, and let it sit for a second. Now I'm just coming back around and wiping it all off. And it comes off so easily with the spray. Let me get to here, like this. That's obvious, right? I sprayed that and it wipes right off. Comes right off. I love this stuff. You know, sometimes you need to go back around and hit it again. But if you try doing this without that spray, your life will be much more difficult. I mean, this stuff is amazing. I really don't know what they put in it. That is it for today's video, guys. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay hungry, stay fast, stay tuned. I'm Michael Baxter, and I'm out.
Okay, I've been working like 3 jobs. Probably why I never see ya. Probably why I never have time for the fake friends that won't be ya. Oh God, I've been running now. Up early when the sun is out. Not selling out my own soul, but those real ones, they coming out. Oh, look who's reaching out. Old friends wanna feature now. They don't work, so they need it free. Ooh, you reaching out from the west side of that old town.